to Rob, and he'll take you through his presentation.
Yeah, thanks Liz. Hi everyone. Thanks for hanging on. And obviously a big thanks to Liz and Welsh Athletics for inviting me down, and a big thanks to you guys for signing in. It's always a bit humbling for me that people actually want to listen in and kind of share my family's story. Obviously the two boys are sitting on the picture, and that's one of my most favourite pictures in my album at the moment. So what I would like to do tonight is have a quick whistle-stop tour through my coaching journey and touch a little bit on the transition from junior athlete to senior athlete. When Liz asked me to do this and I started doing a bit of research, I'd actually forgotten just how complex that transition period is. So I've only really got 20 minutes, 30 minutes to go through that. So what I've done is given you the examples that what the boys went through when they were transitioning, and just to show you some of the issues that can crop up and hopefully how we kind of resolve them. So just to give you a little bit of a background on me, joined Kilbarchan AAC, my local club, in 1974. It was the first night of the club reforming after a period of just a gap between the Second World War and obviously modern times. I was there on the very first night. I think I was aged about 10 or 11 at the time, and I've been there ever since. And I think that club background has influenced my coaching along the way. I'm a strong believer in the club setup and how it can influence and shape elite athletes as they progress through. I was Scottish and Scottish Schools under 15 boys cross country champion in 1979, but as the presentation will unfold, I'm very much the underperformer in the house. I've only got 2 Scottish titles to my name. So Scottish Schools and Scottish Junior International Athlete, and that's me, and they're number 6. And the only reason I put that picture in, it's not really to show me in any great light as any great athlete, but I've been 6'3" since I was 14 years old, and I never made it as a senior athlete, and that's had another big influence on my coaching. I'm very much aware that not everyone progresses through the ranks, and it's not got anything to do with bad coaching, overreaching as a junior. Sometimes it's just nature. I mean, no one asks to be 6'3" when you're 14. No one asks you to be the biggest. You never ever ask to be the biggest in the class, and that had a bit of an effect on me as I tried to transition through into the seniors, which I'll touch on a bit later on. So I started coaching 17 years ago when Callum started at Kilbarchan. Also a father and a coach to an athlete who's gone through the American Collegiate and the NCAA experience. And that had, again, is another influence on me, which I'll explain. I'm a retired policeman, and that has had a major factor on how I approach things. But basically, we're the nosiest people in the world, and we always want to get to the bottom of things and find out how things work. So I've never really stopped inquiring on how coaching and how athletics progresses. I've got the supportive stroke pushy parent t-shirt as well. I've had my moments when the boys were a bit younger. One episode springs to mind when Derek was doing the inter-counties cross-country championships at Nottingham at the time. He was in with a chance of winning a medal. I looked over, he's in the starting pens 10 minutes before the race, and he doesn't have his spikes on. So I immediately march over. I'm getting angrier and angrier at the time, and I look at him, and he looks back, and the second word, I just look in his eyes, and the second word that comes out of his mouth is going to be off. So I just decided, you know, enough's enough. Get a grip of this, and I had to walk away. And I've never been anywhere near the boys at the start of a race since then. And the father of 3 talented athletes, which I'll share their experiences as we go through. So all that has given me a wealth of experience to draw on, but I'm very much still a work in progress. I do not, under any circumstances, consider myself to be an expert on anything. I'm still learning, I'm still striving to learn. Okay, just to give you a bit of background and a bit of context to the boys, and I think it's important to have that if you're going to think about the transition from junior to senior. So we start with Derek, he's the oldest. Talent wasn't immediately obvious when he first started running. He was dead last by about 43 seconds in his first 1500 metre race. And after that race, he vowed he was never going to run again. But we managed, a bit of persuasion, we managed to get him back in. And he was the 7th Kilbarchan counter at the Scottish Under-13 cross-country championships. Just lucky enough to make the second team. A year later, he medalled. So from then, he's won 16 Scottish titles at road, track and cross-country since under-13. He's medalled in every age group at the Scottish cross-country championships, and he's been the champion 5 times. 2004, he was the first person in 32 years to retain the under-15 boys Scottish cross-country title. And he won it as a first year, and he won it as a second year, which is no mean feat. He's unbeaten in Scotland that time, and that year, and he was third in the inter-counties race, the one I mentioned when I was being a bit pushy. And you could probably argue he's been a high-performing athlete from a very young age. Scott, this is the one that nobody really talks about, and we call him the one that got away. He's my middle son. 10 Scottish titles at road, track and cross. Third under-17 at inter-counties cross-country. A pro youth footballer, and he was trying to juggle both sports. And he's just that annoying family member who's good at everything. Every family has one. Good at golf, good at any sport, anything with a ball. And he's arguably the most naturally talented athlete of the 3. But he's happy just being good. Scott doesn't want to be excellent. He's just happy being good, picks things up very quickly, gets to a good level, and he's happy with that. And then moving on to Callum, coached by me since 12, Scottish primary schools cross-country champion, and he's won Scottish cross-country championships in every age group from under-15 to the seniors. Inter-counties British schools cross-country champion, Celtic Games, and you see the rest of the list there. And tied with his brother, which is always a source of fun in our house. He's got 16 Scottish titles, and we're just waiting on the first one to get 17. So often we get asked the question, how do we get from the picture on the left to the picture on the right? And it's not just a case of Callum being able to put the same shoes on at the same time to the nice example of product placement on the right. So again, a bit of background to them. All 3 were very active children, particularly Callum. There's only 11 months between Derek and Scott, so they were quite pally, and there's a good group of friends where we stayed. And often you'd hear the whole gang running past the house, and 30 seconds later you would hear some smaller footsteps coming past as Callum tried to catch his big brothers, and he was only 3 at the time, so he'd sneaked out the house again just to go out and play. And normally that would be followed by a phone call from a neighbour saying he's escaped again, or me cutting him off at the back door. So a multi-sport background, right up to second year under 15. Football, rugby, and shinty, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, is hockey in the extreme. The pitch is about 1.5 football pitches long, and it's played a bit like golf. And basically they were involved in any sport that involved running about. Always encouraged that. Just keep active and keep them in some kind of sport. And I started my coaching career when Callum joined his brothers at Kilbarchan, and I took on a group of new starts, including Callum. And it was primarily due to a lack of coaches at the club, which is unfortunately all too common just now, and also a little bit on not quite agreeing with what I was seeing. in terms of coaching, because the boys were obviously 2 years older than Callum, and they were in a different age group. So both of these factors were playing on me at the time. But initially, I was quite happy to remain a level 2 coach due to work commitments. I had no intentions whatsoever of moving any further at that point. So I was quite happy, albeit I wasn't quite agreeing with what was happening coach-wise at the club. The club had been very good to me when I was younger, and they were very good to Derek and Scott in terms of support. So I really just wanted to give a little bit back, and if that was just taking a group of young kids through their journey at that point, then I was quite happy doing that. So we get to 2007, Callum ran the inter-counties, and believe it or not, if you go back to the picture, I'll take you back just now. The one on the left, with Derek in the club kit. Derek's the same age in that picture. In fact, he's 2 months younger than Callum is in that one. So it's kind of relevant to the discussion further on in the presentation about transitioning through seniors. Derek was a much bigger kid than Callum was at the same age. But anyway, this is the race that changed my approach to the whole thing. I don't know if anybody was there that day, then Callum just took off. What he's kind of renowned for is just his front running style and pushing things hard, and that's the first race we actually ever saw that. He just took the race with the scruff of the neck and basically ran away from everyone. And when you see him in the picture, he's very slight. He's much smaller than the other boys in terms of build and maturity. And at that point, I realised he was a little bit different. But if he was going to go anywhere, he probably needed more experienced and knowledgeable coaching, and probably a more experienced and knowledgeable coach at that time. So we took a decision. At that point, I wasn't sure if I could commit to anything. I was working shifts. Obviously, I couldn't be there at training all the time because of that. So I talked it over with him, and he was quite adamant that he wanted me to coach him. So I had to up my game and basically stay one step ahead of him as he progressed. So my response, at that time it was UK Athletics Level 3. That was the only one that was available to me, 2 parts to it. They're only held once a year, and it's not designed for shift workers. So I couldn't actually get any further coaching qualifications at that point. Due to the reorganisation of UK Coach Ed, I got stuck at level 2 for quite some time. I think it's only in the last 7 or 8 years that I've managed to progress onto event group coach. But again, there's a whole debate. It's another debate about coach education in the UK, and I don't really want to go down that road. Anyway, what I did do was I started reading just anything I could find on athletics and coaching kids and the events, the different events, right? Pestering people with Mike Speed Dial 1 Johnson. I'll come on to Mike in a minute. But basically, he was a font of all knowledge for me at that time. And I just attended as many conferences, seminars and workshops that I could, just to try and expand my knowledge a little bit. And it's something that stuck with me way the way to the present day. If you're a coach, don't just restrict yourself to the official coach education pathway. We all know what it is, you have to do it, but there's much more out there for you if you just go and look for it. So essentially what I tried to do, just try and do the right things at the right time and build a robust athlete. So I was looking at the athlete development model from the coach education system. Gives you a rough timeline when to bring things in and when to hit the right energy systems, that type of thing. And started bringing in some strength and conditioning, some basic core work to start with, a bit of S&C, but speak to someone that knows something about it. I mean, it's not my expertise, and I still find it quite difficult to knit the two together. You've got an athlete at the moment who's banging out 130 miles a week. Where do you fit in the S&C work? It can get quite difficult to do. But essentially what I do know, and what I did know at the time, was consistent training breeds a successful athlete. So you have to be able, the athlete has to be robust enough to handle the training to be consistent. So the other part I did was put a kind of long-term plan to ensure a safe progression from junior to senior. And what I did there was basically try and look at what the senior athletes were doing in terms of volume, in terms of mileage, what the long run is, what event Callum might or might not go to at the time. I had a rough idea he was always going to be a long endurance athlete, but it's just at that time, would we fit all this bit in? So once I've had a rough idea about the mileage that was required at a senior, I dialed it back to what he was doing at that particular time, and then I put some steps, some progressive steps in between, so that he was always constantly progressing up in terms of volume, but always at a safe loading, so that when he arrived at seniors, it wasn't too big a jump. And that really came from my own experience as an athlete. I was 6'3", and didn't really need to train too hard. Won a Scottish championship of training 3 days a week, but all the while everyone else was working really, really hard. And by the time I got to senior, I found myself having to make a massive jump in mileage, and my body couldn't handle it. So I never ever progressed. So it always stuck in my mind. So if we're going to make that, that's one of the key things for me for transition from junior to senior. So a bit of performance planning in there as well. Started bringing this in quite early. Most of you will know it's quite self-explanatory. You'll know what it's all about. Just put the training year into phases, and inadvertently by doing that and progressing the mileage the way I did, kind of safeguarded the kids at that point. The maximum mileage was 50 miles a week at that point, but they were only doing it for a block of 6 weeks or so. And by doing so, it allowed them to get used to working really, really hard. But in terms of overall volume through the course of the whole year, the average mileage is only like 39 miles a week or something. So again, it was an inadvertent. I didn't realise I was doing it at the time, but I think that was one of the key factors on them transitioning through. They were used to targeting key races, and by adopting that approach, it was safeguarding them as well. It wasn't constantly hitting them with high volume all the time, but still getting results at the end of the day. So the key people, Mike, we've already spoken about. He was the head of endurance, the Scottish Athletics, and Mike answers a question with half an answer and gives you a clue where to find the rest of the answer. And that approach appealed to me. I don't know if it appealed to the policeman side of me, like follow the clues and solve the case type thing. But certainly, I think I learned a lot more in that approach than someone just spoon feed me all the information. I always think if you're finding out the answers for yourself, then it's going to stick a lot better than somebody just spoon feeding you all the information. But I've got to say, I think without Mike, I don't think I would probably be anywhere near the level of coaching I'm doing just now. And Chris, I don't know if Chris is actually dialed in tonight, but if he is, I probably haven't said this to him before. But Chris did a workshop at one of the Scottish Athletics conferences way back. And the one big thing that stuck with me at that time was the attention to detail. Chris is second to none at it. And it struck me that, in order, if you want to progress and you have your athletes progress, you have to have great attention to detail, take good notes, just be aware of everything that you're doing. And it always struck me, and I've stood by that since Chris did that workshop. So, kind of moving on, dark times and testing times. As I say, it's a highly complex subject, and it's very unique to each individual athlete. So it's difficult to actually put something in place to say, look, here's some guidelines for you. So what I've done is I've just used the boys as case studies, and hopefully you'll be able to figure out or recognise some of the problems. If you use Derek, he was dominant at under 15, but he's not so dominant anymore. This caused major problems at under 17 level in terms of confidence. He's always better at the top end of the race distances, but he generally at that time thought he was a 1500 metre runner. And he couldn't quite get it into his head that, yeah, you will be good, you know, because you're very good, you've got a very good engine, you're going to be good at the 1500. Whereas when you look at the television, all the 1500 metre runners, the seniors are all speed merchants. He didn't quite have the tools, but because, and it's hard to reconcile the fact that just because you're the Scottish under 1500 metre champion, it doesn't mean you're actually a 1500 metre runner. And he almost left the sport during this time. He kept his foot in the door with it. He kept training a little bit, and then he would take a break. And there was some tantrums at times, a lot of soul searching, because I knew, I mean, he is a fantastic athlete, as he's proven, but he genuinely wasn't enjoying it at all at that point. So I had to find a solution. Whatever was happening at the club wasn't working for him. So I couldn't coach him at the time. Derek and I are very similar. At that point, we were too similar, and we would just butt heads all the time. So me coaching him wasn't the best thing to do. So we had a change of coach. Laurie Spence, who's an ex-Scottish international athlete. So change of training group. He remained a Kilbarchan athlete, but just changed training group. And it was the right coach at the right time. He gave honest and sometimes brutal feedback. And I'll show you an example of what Derek's like further on in the presentation. But Derek, he appreciates honesty in any feedback. Don't try and pull the wool over his eyes, because he'll give you it both barrels. So he turned Derek right around, and a couple of years later, he was a Scottish under-20 cross-country champion, and it's probably one of the best performances he's ever done. It was a real turning point for him. So if we move on to Scott, Scott just left the sport. He just didn't enjoy it anymore. Again, a lot of soul searching in the house, a lot of anxiety in the house, because to be honest, Scott's more talented than the other two put together. He's just got something, but he just does not want to be excellent. He's just happy being good, as I said earlier. So at that point, the difficult decision, your kid is inherently unhappy. What are you going to do? So off he went. Doesn't play football anymore, just keeps fit in the gym. Spoke to him the other day when I told him I was doing this presentation, and I said, look, do you miss running at all? Like, no, not at all. Nothing appeals to me less now than running. I'm just quite happy just being in the gym. So he left the sport, and we had to say goodbye to Scott. And then Callum, in his American adventure. I've got a whole presentation dedicated to Callum in America, and I could do that all day if you wanted. So Callum, after successful junior, under 17, in 2009, he decides he's going to go, no, 2010, sorry, after the World Cross, he decides he's going to go to BUTLER University in Indianapolis. If you look on the right-hand side, sorry, the left-hand side, on the surface, strong programme. As a Scottish assistant coach, they're telling me his bespoke S&C programme, on-campus physio, on-campus massage, and for me the big selling point, like most of the universities, it has to be said, is mandatory supervised study. Because I know what Callum can be like. He's a bright kid, but he's not a natural scholar. You have to superglue him to a seat just to get him to read anything. But the reality of it was the current team were not as good as the paper form suggested. The assistant coach didn't have as much authority as he initially thought. Everything was head coach, and what head coach said, that happened. The S&C was squad based. It's basically a core stability program at the beginner level. And I did speak to the head coach at the time, and basically his mantra was, if it interferes with running, it doesn't happen. So there's a few concerns from the get-go about the whole thing. The physio wasn't what we understood to be a physio, and it was shared with basketball, which is the #1 sport at Butler. Basically, they're called athletics trainers, and it's almost like halfway between what we know as a physio and a masseur. So it lies somewhere in the middle. Just to give you a bit of perspective on the importance of basketball, but they made the NCAA finals the year before Callum joined the uni, and they played one of the games at the Indianapolis Colts Stadium and sold out 70,000 seats. TV rights alone were $10 million that came straight to the university. So if you're looking at the cross-country program or the track and field program, which is bringing in absolutely no money whatsoever, you can guess where the physio is going to spend most of their time. So if you got a bit of a niggle, you got a bit of an injury, you were struggling a little bit. The massage was off campus. You had to make your own way there, which wasn't great because, like most universities as well, yeah, they've bought up some nice ground, but right, it's the area around about it, it's not great. So travelling to and from the masseur, it got a bit hairy. And the supervised study actually added to the fatigue, which I'll explain in a bit. So again, signing up for mechanical engineering and a physics degree, as I say, he's quite a bright kid. But what they do in the States, they stretch a 3 or 4 year degree out into 5 or 6 years. So the first 2 years he's doing liberal arts. So he's studying French, music and action, and critiquing the impact of science fiction movies on American youth culture, which didn't go down too well at all. He basically just said, I'm not doing that, and half the time didn't go to class. Day was structured in a way that he was on the go from 6 AM to 10 PM. He was not getting to bed till midnight. Again, the supervised study was 7 till 9. You had to be there 4 days a week. You're up, and the training, the workouts as they call them, at 6 AM in the morning. So essentially, you're trying to do all this on 5 or 6 hours sleep. So he started, basically what he would do was go, train, come back, shower, have some breakfast. Well, I've not got a class till 11 o'clock, I'll go for a snooze and then wake up at 1 o'clock. And if anyone knows about the NCAA system, they can excuse bad performances running-wise or sport-wise. But if your GPA goes down the pan, then there's almost no way back for you. So his GPA really started to plummet. And essentially just taking longer and longer to answer WhatsApp messages and Skype calls, they just became non-existent. So contact between parents and your son just starts disappearing. So actually, we had to fly over to the States twice to sort them out. And the first one, we actually sorted out the coach. Well, my wife sorted out the coach at that point because things weren't going well, running wise as well. However, he made friends for life. He still goes, when he goes to camp in Flagstaff or Boulder, he always arranges to meet up with some of his friends who make the effort to drive or fly in from wherever they are in the States. So that shows you how close the friendship is. The coach did take some of the messages on board. He changed things up in the second year. Callum got his head back in the game, well, athletically anyway. Great Lakes Regional Cross Country Championships, our champion. And I've got to say that is one of his best ever performances. We flew over to watch the race, well, to kick his backside for the second time and watch the race. And I've got to say it's one of the best performances he's ever put in. But he'd learned new things in training, which we still use today. And essentially what made him tick. And this is where we caught sight of the potential at the marathon. He was, the Americans are mad keen on big, long tempo runs. And he was only 18 or 19 at the time, and we'd been knocking out 10-mile runs in 51 minutes. And, there's a couple of Scots on the team, and you speak to them after, and they said, he's absolutely killing everyone. He's bobbling along at 5:05 miling, 5-minute miling, having a conversation. He's killing everybody. So we knew at that point, so eventually further down the line, he's going to go to the marathon. So, you know, essentially he learned the lessons that needed to be learned, both in athletics and in life. But again, like everything else, 19 years of age, everything's going really, really well. He said his best ever cross-country season. He's ran sub 30 for 10K in the cross-country on a legitimately tough cross-country course. He's got his 5K PBs coming down at a decent level. And then in the March in 2012, he tore his left lateral cartilage. June, he had to come home to the UK because of his GPA issues. 2 operations, because the first one, and he got one in the States before he left, and he had to have a second one in December that year, because the first one didn't actually solve the problem. Essentially, he lost almost 2 years of his career at that point. So he was out for the whole of 2012, come back for 2013, but was nowhere near where he needed to be. But eventually, we got him back in 2014. But I do believe that chunk of missing time cost him. It was one of the main reasons why we moved to the marathon a bit early, because he had lost a bit of zip at the 5K over the 2 years, and it wasn't coming back at all. But to be fair to Callum, through this whole period of time, different to Derek, and that 2 years would have shaken anyone, but he did not lose faith in any shape or form. He retained his confidence throughout the whole time. He knew, I'm coming back, definitely coming back. We managed to get a good conditioning program in place because of that, and eventually got back and made the 2014 Commonwealth Games team at the 10,000. Wasn't his best race, but the fact of the matter is he qualified, and that was the main thing. But slightly different to Derek, who had a real wobble of confidence. Callum never ever lost confidence, and even when he came back and things weren't going great, he hadn't lost the ability to race. He was making the moves at the right time, doing all the right things in races. He just didn't have the tools to carry it out properly. So essentially, what I've came to the conclusion, there is no roadmap for transitioning from a junior to senior athlete. There's a whole load of stuff out there about early specialisation, all that kind of stuff. But to me, it's just unique to each individual athlete. You don't know. There's 2 boys from the same parents. One has a major wobble. The other one has got that inner steel and that inner confidence just to hold things together when things are not going right. I've got another athlete I'm coaching just now who's in a totally different situation from these guys. Very talented athlete. However, not academically qualified to get to university, so he's had to leave school straight into a trade. He's an apprentice plumber, and that's now causing major issues. So it's not always about pushing them too hard when they're younger, overtraining, all this stuff. I think a lot of this stuff is basically lifestyle when it comes to junior to senior athlete. So some of my coaching, I don't like using the word philosophy and principles, it's just things for me. So that one young coach tip from Steve Magnus: coach development athletes, you'll learn development coaching thoroughbreds right away, hide your own inadequacies. So yeah, I do agree with that. Get the foundations right, arm your athletes with the tools they require for the event, and basically put the Ferrari engine in a Ferrari. We've seen so many senior athletes who've got massive internal engines, but the body can't handle it because they haven't been given the tools for the event. There is one part about that quote from Steve Magnus, is you never know when the next thoroughbred's going to walk through the door. That's the problem with this. When I was young, a younger coach, I was never young, Callum was when Callum made his breakthrough in 2007. I had no idea he was going to do what he did, and I haven't got the tools to coach him at that point. So you really, it's all very well saying that, you know, you coach development athletes, but within 6 months, your development athlete could be a real thoroughbred. So you have to be very, very careful with that. So for that one, I think the coach, you always need to stay one step ahead of the athlete in terms of knowledge if you're going on the journey together. There's nothing worse, I always refer it back to work when I was in the police, there's nothing worse than going to the boss and saying, what are we going to do next? And the boss says, I don't know. And it's the same with the athlete to the coach. You turn around and say, what's next, coach? I don't know. It's so undermining, you just destroyed everything just by saying that. In terms of training, it needs to be targeted to the requirements of the event and be progressive. I touched on that earlier. If you're taking them from junior to senior athlete, you have to put the stepping stones in place and make sure it's a safe journey right the way through to seniors. And athletes need to understand the sport and the event. I think one of the boys, the biggest tools they've got is the fact that they understand the sport and they understand the events that they've competed in. And I think a lot of that came from me having to work shifts. I wasn't there all the time for training. So I had to make sure that if I wasn't there in the session, I always gave a session, there was someone to supervise the session. I always gave them the knowledge and the information about how to change the session on the hoof if the weather was bad, or they just had to change it if they weren't feeling that great that night, or just whatever reason they had to change the session. So they kind of grew up from an early age with, here's the event, this is how it works, and this is how you can change the training if you need to. So they've got this deep understanding. I think if you understand the sport and you understand the event, you've got a better chance of making it all the way through. There's a bit of planning and flexibility around planning. I love that quote from Mike Tyson. It's like, everyone, I'm a big planner. That's one of my faults. My wife always gives me a bit of grief on it because I'm always planning and plotting things. But everyone's got a plan until they're punched in the face. Particularly in sport with injuries, to me, boys have gone through so much, they're an occupational hazard. They nearly always happen in the build up to the biggest events, but they're also opportunities to address things. We've always got a plan B sitting. If the boys pick up a niggle, we can just switch straight over to cross training after consultation with the physio. We hardly ever break stride now, and it's always good to have that. And it's the big thing is don't stress or panic about it. It's going to happen. You can do your best to try and prevent it, but invariably it will happen. Build a good support team around the athlete, the squad, physio, massage, S&C. That kind of team approach is vital to minimise disruptions. You can't do it all on your own. That's for sure. And you have to have the confidence at times to release control of things and hand it over to somebody else if, in the instance there's an injury, hand it over to the physio if you're confident in the physio. A quick example would when Derek and the lead up to Rio, when he fractured his pelvis, I was in Mallorca with Callum at the time. Derek chose to stay home, but the lead coach for that whole period was the physio, and I was quite confident and comfortable with that. I'm not one of these coaches who's going to, I'm the coach, who'll do what I say. I'm not an expert in injury rehab. The physio is, so just hand it over to them. But also, while you've got that squad and building up that team, don't be afraid to change things that you both know are not right. Best example I've got that one is what was a physio. I think it's the best phrase I've ever heard. It's definitely not a bony stress issue. So basically, I looked at the physio and said, well, so it could be, and they got all flustered and things like that. So you're just confusing the issue. So we parted ways at that point. You have to surround people, have to surround yourself with people that you trust and you know you're going to get good, honest feedback from. Again, the top one, hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. And again, I look back to my own career, own athletics career on this, and that's one of the big take-home lessons for me on that one. You can be as talented, you can be the most talented person in the world, but at a certain point, you're going to have to work hard. And installing a good work ethic at an early age, that's vital, if I'm honest. The boys have always been talented, but they've always worked very, very hard. And they've got a good work ethic. I know for a fact that I don't need to say to them, I didn't need to say to them when they were younger, you need to go out and train tonight. You know, they always did it. I think as well as when the kids are growing up, particularly with Derek was the best example of this one. You often forget how difficult it is to perform year after year at a young age and how stressful it is on a youngster. You have to help them manage this. And I just remember reflecting back on Derek. The whole season unbeaten, and then you rock up as an under 17 and you're getting toasted every other race. That's a hard thing to deal with. It really is. So you just have to be careful of that and just help them manage it. It's the athlete's journey and their career. It's not the coaches or the parents. And again, using Scott as the example, not everyone will be as committed to athletics as you think they are. Just because they're good, just because they're winning, doesn't mean to say they want to do it. They might be doing it with a sense of duty to other people. But again, I've always made a point of sitting down and talking to every athlete I coach and say, look, what do you want to do? This is your journey. It's not mine. I'll facilitate and I'll guide and I'll advise. But at the end of the day, it's their journey. Again, another quote said, focus on the process, not the result. Praise effort rather than outcome. Yeah, that's okay unless you've got a Derek in the house. And there's the quote from 2007. I think he just had enough. I was trying my very, very best to get a positive out of everything. And he wasn't having any of it. And he just said, no, Dad, I was just rubbish that day. So I always have a bit of a laugh about that one. So, and listen to your athletes. So, despite appearances, they sometimes know what they're talking about. I mean, I've got a few in my squad who you wouldn't put them down as students of the sport in any shape or form, but you know, you sit and have a chat with them, and they do understand what it's about. And the last one is, I think, is just seize your opportunities. You never know what's around the corner for you. So, a couple of things have popped up. And we've decided, you know, we've had a think about, do we go for some representative match or do we not? Or will we wait till next year? So, you know what, you can't really afford to wait till next year. And the boys have had injuries their whole life. Every athlete's had injuries their whole life. So I think sometimes you just have to seize the opportunity when it arises, and to see, because you never know what's around the corner, and you could have you're only one step away from a disaster. For some of these guys. So that kind of sums that up. So I think the plan is to do some questions via WhatsApp. Just give me a minute, I wanted to put my specs on, which is another first because no one outside the house has ever seen me with my specs. So I can see what I'm doing. So I say, if we don't get round all the questions tonight, certainly I can I did amend this slide earlier on to put my email address on it. You can just drop me an email later on, but I've just obviously fallen off. So first question, what challenges did you face as a parent coach? It looks like an anonymous one. I think the biggest challenge is when to be a parent and when to be the coach. It kind of blurs in certain situations. it's a lot better now. Obviously, they're not kids anymore, even though they act like it. I think the challenge is trying to separate. When you're in a group situation when they're kids, it's difficult to be the coach when your own kid's acting up, because sometimes the default position is be the parent and chastise your children as you would do in the house, which is not always the best thing to do. It's certainly different now, and I think it's better now, because we can say and do things. Well, not do things. That's the wrong one. We can say things to each other that you might not always get away with other athletes. So the next one from Chris Jones. Who's listening? You have an honest approach to your coaching. Do you change your approach when coaching girls and boys? Do they respond differently to training sessions and feedback? I'm fairly consistent in my approach. I don't coach too many girls. I've got 1, 2, 3 in the books and 1 just arriving. I try to treat everyone the same, but sometimes 2 of the girls I coach are quite robust, and they give me it back as good as I give it to them in terms of the banter and things. And one of the girls is not quite as good, so I do have to change my approach to them. They do respond differently to training, and they do definitely different feedback. A couple of the girls are actually tougher than the boys, so some of the feedback is actually pretty, I think the boys tend to do a bit more moaning than the girls on that one. So the next one, in hindsight, would you have kept Callum in Scotland rather than have his experience in the States? That's a difficult one, to be honest. I'm a big believer in things happening for a reason. If he hadn't gone to the States, we might not have caught a glimpse of what he could do for the marathon. In terms of athletics over there, I think it was the right move at the right time. Certainly his first year was a massive experience for him. He was used to finishing top 5 in every race that he ran up until right from the very word go. And then all of a sudden he's finished, I think, 101st or something, one of the cross-country races, 78th at regionals. I think it was a bit of a learning curve for him, and I think he benefited from that experience. The flip side of that was, I think it kind of wrecked any chance he had of ever getting a degree. He did not enjoy the academic side of things. Certainly as well, the coach, he was different, not what he was used to. So I would have to say, probably on balance, it would be 50-50 on that one. I'll sit on the fence. Certainly some good things come out of the States, and equally some really bad things come out of the States. So I'll go 50-50 on that one. A question from Spiral, is it? Do you have any coaching regrets? What would you do differently? Ooh. Now then, well, that's a really tough question. I'll come back to that one. I'll have a wee think about that, and I'll come back to it. So one from Jason: what is the secret ingredient to Scottish athletics success? You don't know the magical powers of iron brew and haggis, then? Well, secret ingredient. I don't think, to be honest, I think if you look at everyone involved in Scottish athletics at the moment that are competing at the highest level, they've all come through the club system. Everyone can relate to them. And I do remember, just use Derek as an example. Derek made the Commonwealth Games team, and I think it was a whole stack of guys and girls looked at him and said, you know what, he's not that much better than me. I can do that. And I think that's kind of rumbled right the way through the whole thing. If you look at any of the, Reid called them the Doha dozen, all the athletes that made it to the World Champs team in Doha, they all have a strong club connection. Everyone knows what club they compete for. And I think it's that kind of recognition that spurs on other people on. So they, everyone looks at them and says, they've come through the club system. I can do that as well. And I think it's just, I genuinely think it's as simple as that. That plus a wee sprinkling of talent and a huge dose of hard work on everybody's part. Okay, one more, no further questions, I will wrap up. Oh, wait a minute, I haven't answered Spyro yet, so any coaching regrets? What would I do differently? I would have to say not getting involved in coaching seriously earlier. I was, at the time, I was quite happy in circumstances dictated that I was quite happy at level 2, but to be honest, I wish I'd gone for it a bit earlier and really worked hard at it, because I thoroughly enjoy it. I get a lot of fulfilment out of the whole thing. Yeah, so coaching a bit earlier. All good?
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic, Rob. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And again, apologies to everybody for the initial troubles getting in. Yeah, fantastic, Rob. We've got your part 2 of your webinar series next week, which will focus a little bit more on the long distance events. But yeah, very much thank you to everybody attending. And yeah, we'll hope to see you all next week.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.